again, everyone. I'm very happy that you could make it for my mermaid experiences. So, I'm going to continue reading my dreams and sharing my experiences with you. So, without further ado, I'm going to get to reading. I dreamt I was in a bustling city. The city had many large structures, including golden pyramids around it. One of the pyramids were under construction, but it was far away and I could not see much. There were floating things around it, but I couldn't see any more. And then I saw Father God Ra sitting on an elevated platform. His throne was golden, and the steps leading up to his platform were also golden. I approached him, and I was so happy to see him. I knelt down and I laid my upper body and my head onto his lap. I felt his gentle hand rub my back lovingly. Then he rose from his throne, and he took my hand and he led me to a nearby beach. It was a beautiful beach, with beautiful bright blue water and white sands. There he walked with me, barefoot, to the water's edge, the sand softly cushioning my feet, the water touching my toes, the sound of the waves crashing on the shore gently. He pulled my hand gently. He said, "There." I looked. He said, so he was pulling my hand like this as I was standing in the sand. And he said, "There, right there." I looked at his beautiful falcon face, and then I looked at my feet, touching the waves. And then I looked out at the sea. And then I woke up. So with this dream, it was kind of not necessarily a mermaid dream, but I did find it interesting that Father God Ra was taking me to the sea and pointing to the part of me, like getting my attention, like touching the sea and saying, "There, right there." And I was like trying to understand him. It's almost like he was trying to help me understand I have the connection to the sea and to remember that or to focus on it. So it was just that connection that he was guiding me to that had to deal with the sea. So that's why I wanted to include it in this mermaid experience set of videos. It was very interesting that he led me to the sea and wanted me to focus on the sea like that. So just something really interesting. So before we go on in dreams, I wanted to bring up an experience I had when I was about 14 or 15 years old. I was visiting my dad in Hawaii, and we were going snorkeling. So I believe it was at Hanama Bay. And my dad bought us all flippers. I had never worn flippers in my life. And I remember walking, you have to walk to the side into the water when you have your flippers on. When you put them on land, you have to sidestep into the sea to make it easier to get into the water. So I remember sidestepping as I was told to get into the water until you were about waist high, and then you could, move forward or allow yourself to fall forward into the ocean and then swim. And I remember that my dad went out there with me, and I I had my stepmom at the time. She was also there. I believe she was to my left, and I believe my dad was to my right. And I was kind of in the middle. And the goal was to find, I think, a sandbar or some parts of the coral reef that we could just kind of snorkel, look at, and never to stand on, never to like try to handle or touch, because coral is very sensitive. And a lot of tourists, please don't ever do this if you are near a coral reef, or if you are lucky enough to see coral reef, don't stand on it. Please. So we were swimming, and I don't know what happened. I literally got to the point where I was in the water, and I'd never worn flippers before. Again, in my life, never worn flippers. I don't know what came over me. I turned my body to the side. So I turned like from this way, and then I turned this way. Like I turned to the side. I crossed my feet like this so that the flippers were like this. So now I'm in the water. So my feet went from like this to like this with the flippers at the edge. I turned on my side, and I moved like that. I literally moved like this. I was gone. My dad said, we got out there. No sooner had we got out there, and he said, you were gone and I couldn't find you. He was worried, and he was mad too. So he was upset too, but he said from his perspective, we got out there. No sooner had we got out there, he said, you took off, and he said, you were like a little lightning bolt and you were gone. From my perspective, I just remember getting out there and everybody was waiting. And I remember I didn't even have thoughts. I was just like, this is okay. We're doing this. Gone. It was a relatively shallow area. The light shone through to everything, so there was a lot of life. And I found an eel, and I remember swimming down to him, and when I came up to him, he was a little moray eel. It was some rocky kind of area, and he was in his little hole, and he was just sitting there like doing the moray eel thing where they just breathe with their mouth, and he was just there breathing, looking at me like, what's up? How's your day? And I just watched him. And then I heard like splashing, and I like we were both like looking and they were like some noisy people coming, and they came down and they had cameras, and they were splashing everywhere, and like he went back into his little hidey hole, and I left because I was like, shoot, I don't want to draw attention to him. So like I kind of left a little bit, kind of backed up a little bit, and then they were trying to like mess with him, like get into the hole or take pictures and stuff. Thank goodness he just hung out there. I felt horrible because I was like, oh gosh, I hope I didn't draw attention to him. Her, I'm not sure. But then they left. Like they were like, oh, he's not coming out or whatever. And they left. And I was like, I watched to make sure they were like gone, right? And then I went back to him, and I just sat there in the water, holding my breath. Just sat there in the water. And then he was just like, he just started breathing. He was just hanging out. We were just hanging out together. So I just watched him. And he was just there looking at me like, what are you doing? But I watched him for a little while. And then I told him to have a good day. And then I went to the edge of the sandbar. And of course, it had even more life on it. There were Christmas tree worms and butterfly fish and anemones. And they were all just proliferating there, just so beautiful. So I went there and I was just looking at the Christmas tree worms, and the little butterfly fish, the little yellow butterfly fish were just like swimming around. And I just remember feeling the tickle of the cold water as it came up from the depths and touched my feet. And then the warm water from the top areas as it came over my body with each current and each wave. And I just remember thinking to myself, like, this is who I am. And I wasn't scared at all. It didn't creep me out. It didn't make me frightened. So that was an experience I had. But yeah, I was going everywhere. Just traveling with my flippers like this and just traveling everywhere. My dad couldn't find me. I popped up my head like that, and he finally looked over and he saw me and he was like, "You need to stay on the sandbar where I can find you." And I was like, "Okay. Sorry." I had to go back because my dad was scared that I had disappeared somewhere. I was like, "Okay, done with the human world. Goodbye." So, yeah, that was when I was about 14, 15, I think. So, yep, that was one of those experiences where I just, out of the blue, and I was definitely not a spiritual person at that time at all. So with that, I will go ahead and read the next dream. I dreamt that I was living in a city that was by the sea. It was a very lively city with people laying out by the beach, eating and drinking. It seemed like an older city, or perhaps even an ancient one. I remember that I was there with my sister. My sister was older than me, and she did not agree with my presence there. I immediately felt as though she and I were from the sea. She preferred being in a royal status within the city, without any competition. And it felt like she wished I would return to the sea. But I felt closer to the sea, and I missed it. I was also still trying to be with my sister, but it felt apparent that she did not prefer such an arrangement. I was walking on a road by the sea, and the sun shone through the clouds in beautiful rays. Suddenly, I heard people screaming, and everyone started to run. I looked toward the shore, and there I saw a huge shark. It was gigantic. It was bigger than anything I had ever seen, it felt. It had rushed up onto the beach, and the waves crashed up around it. It started speaking in a foreign language which sounded low and growly. The people screamed and ran. I ran to it, and I placed my hand on it, just beneath its large eye. Suddenly, I heard his voice change into a very concerned and deep voice, and he said, "Oh, Princess, you're safe! We were so worried about you. Oh, I'm so glad you're safe." It felt as though he was there to bring my sister and I back to the sea. However, she watched from the cliff tops with an off-putting expression on her face. She did not wish to go back, and she wanted me to go back instead. She wanted to be the sole ruler here. I wanted to return, so this wasn't really an issue. I felt sad. I remember feeling sad that my sister didn't like me. I wanted to return to the sea. With this large guardian, I would, and I did. And then the dream ended. So with that one, it was really strange because there's no other way for me to describe it. But have you ever seen a megalodon? Because that's about the size of what was on the ocean or on the shore, coming up on the shore, speaking in a low, guttural, growly voice in some language that I apparently understood the language. Nobody else seemed to, or at least didn't seem to care. They were out of there. And I remember not being afraid, but instead I immediately ran to him and I touched him just beneath his eye, and his voice changed to this really sweet, concerned, low voice. Just like, oh my gosh, we're so glad you're okay, kind of thing. And it was like he was there to take my sister and I back, but she didn't want to go back. And being there on land, she didn't have any competition like she would in the sea. But it's okay because I just wanted to go back to the ocean anyway. So I did. I left with Grandpa Meggie. Anyway, so we're going to go ahead and cut it there. But I do thank you for being with me. I hope that you have a beautiful rest of your day or evening. And thank you. Take care.